Welcome. The objective of this first IRIS exercise will be to provide a little bit of an overview of what is in the tool when you first log in, and also to show off the overview section and to demonstrate how a user can go into the overview, drill down, locate stations, units, plant areas, components, and then basically get an overview of the component and some drawings. It's also going to show the documentation which can be uploaded into the system. So, in order to do this, we would first have the start page of this tool. This is the Steinbeiß Advanced Risk Technologies Integrated Risk Management System for Industrial Plants, or IRIS. In order to get to this page, in any case, users are provided with a login link. I'm going to show the link here. I have it bookmarked. So if I go to a login link, which is provided to users, this directs the users to the start page. In order to log in, users are provided credentials. Now, IRIS works with the Steinbeiß Advanced Risk Technologies Customer Relationship Management system, which also has a database of users and their credentials, which are allowed to access this tool. It has a ASP.NET membership provider, and so the users that have defined levels of rights and access rights are able to access this tool. What has also been developed is a single sign-on, which can then be integrated, for example, with a customer's Active Directory, where the usernames of the customer's user profiles can be forwarded and be used also with this tool instead of the integrated user management, which is in the system by default. In order to log into the system, one would use the username and their password provided. If the username or password is, or if the password is forgotten, a user would click on the Forgotten Your Password link, and this is tied to the email, which is tied to the particular username. The user would then receive an email with their username and password at the email which was registered with the particular username. The user can also change a default password provided to them by going to the Change Your Password link. So, in order to log into the system, we simply put in our username and our password and click Login. Now we're confronted with the start screen of IRIS. You can see that my username is here. I have the option to log out, and I'm going to go very shortly over what we see here. The main areas of the start page of IRIS are divided into the header bar, the side pane, and the main work area. And this is a theme that's going to repeat itself throughout the tool later as well. So just to go quickly over some of the elements which are there. So we have the header bar, and upon the header bar we have the name of the tool. Also, clicking on the name of this tool in the header bar will always bring you back to this home page where you will see the start pictures flicking around. You have the help, where we have an online help which is uploaded, which I will demonstrate shortly. So just to demonstrate this, if I go to anything else, and we will actually go into the overview later and I will show it. So this is here in the side pane. If I go to the overview, it's going to open the overview in the main area. If I want to go back to the starting page, I would just click on IRIS and it brings me back to the starting page. With regards to help, clicking the help opens in a new tab in your browser, basically the manual for the IRIS system. This is an older version of the manual, IRIS Petro. A new version of the manual is going to be uploaded. Basically, this user manual indexed and is searchable, and you have all the chapters which are relevant to performing risk assessment, making risk analyses, and generally using the tool to assist you with risk-based inspection. And it goes over the basics such as the application of IRIS with RBIF, and then in particular for some of our clients, elements of their procedures which are integrated into the manual, and also the API 581 elements, because this tool was initially an API 581 RBI software system. Now, to get back to the exercise, what we want to accomplish, or maybe I go a little bit back. So the header bar, basically, as I said, has the title, which can always bring you back to this very start screen, and you have the hub. You also have the option to log out. If I click here, I'm brought back to the login page. The method selection tool on the side pane serves two purposes. It's used primarily with the analyses option here, and it can also be used for another very specific function with the ESCOM RBI methodology. So just quickly to go over the items here, we have the overview again, which can basically provide an overview of the whole client's assets, which are loaded into the database of this tool, which are then logically structured according to the organization, the different plants, and plants are split into their different units and subunits and subunits. So whenever I say a process unit or a subunit, this can refer to, for example, in our case, to a power station, and then a process unit of a power station is actually the unit, like unit 2, 3, or 4, and then the unit itself can also have additional subunits, which would be boiler plant, turbine plant, generator and electrical, or common plant. The master analysis is something that will be covered in other exercises and other videos, but this is a very important part of the tool. This is basically the master data of, or the main and most current data of all of the components which are loaded into the database and is stored in the master analysis. Analyses. So here we have the individual analyses of which are performed, in this case, upon different plant areas. So for instance, one could have let's say Letabo Unit 4 boiler plant analysis part A and part B, or we can call it pre-outage, post-outage, and all of those different analyses would be stored here. In the other bar, we have some additional options which we will also go through in other exercises. We can search and compare components. We can gain an overview of all of the documents which are uploaded into the system. There are some settings which can be changed. There is a user management setting which will only be available to admin users or super admin users, and we can import component data gathering from a prepared component data gathering template sheet using the import function. So the overview command in the side pane, clicking the overview command, as I've stated, brings forward in the main work area basically a tree structure with, in this case, we have ESCOM, and then we have all of the individual power stations. And now you can notice that we already have some documents which are on the level of the whole organization, and we will get to this. So how one can upload documents onto different levels of either on the level of the whole of ESCOM, or on the level of a whole power station, or a unit, or a plant area. And then we have individual stations. If we go, for instance, to Letabo Power Station, we start getting some of the structure in the power station. We have our Unit 4, I have an additional unit 3 here, which was created for some of the exercises. And then we have documents, which would be, for example, applicable to the level of the whole station. If I expand the unit 4, I should get the plant areas. And okay, this is a document which was now uploaded on the level of the unit 4. And then in the plant areas, I would get boiler. And if I expand boiler, I should get a list of all of the components within Letabo Unit 4 boiler, and also some documents on the level of the boiler at the very end, which are the P&IDs of the different systems. Opening these documents in all browsers is as simple as just clicking on the particular document here, and your browser should automatically open it with its built-in PDF viewer. So if I go to an RBI manual, then I am able to load this file and have it for viewing and for use during the assessments. And you can just close the tab if you don't need the document anymore. Now, one thing that you may notice here, and this is something that I also want to demonstrate, is that these components, these terms here are not very understandable to humans. This is because it's currently using something which we call the component comp ID. This was done at a time when functional location codes at the different stations were also not completely unique to every unique component, and also the descriptive names of components were not unique. So something had to be devised which was completely unique so that we could track different components across different assessments in different instances. Now, a functionality which has been built into the tool will allow the user to basically switch between the different types of presentations of these component names or designations. And this is actually located in the master analysis. So I make a small digression, and in the master I would open basically anything just to get to something called the analysis settings, because this data is being drawn from the master analysis. So I'm just going to open a subset of components, for example, the unit 4 boiler. And in order to change the component names, this is now on the analysis settings. I have show as component name, and we have the tooltip here. Basically, we select how we want to display these component names. Also in the overview and in the master. If it is changed in the master in one place, it applies to the whole master. This is something that is different on the level of analyses. So once one gets to the level of analyses, one analysis can have one set of display names, another one can have another set of display names, and so on. So what I'm going to do is change from this name, which is essentially the comp or component ID, to the description, which will be our descriptive names of the components. And the location code would refer to your functional location code. Some stations are KKS stations, some stations are AKZ stations, and then some stations have a special trigram coding system for their components. So I'm just going to quickly flip through these and demonstrate in turn what is shown, for example, in the overview. If I go to description and I go to save analysis settings, and if I close the analysis now and go back to the overview, let's see what we get. So we go back to Letabo Power Station, Unit 4, Boiler, and we start getting the descriptive names, which are, of course, much more meaningful to us humans, and we would be able to locate a component. For instance, in this exercise, we're going to go and look at these economizer inlet headers. Now, of course, if you know the codes of the component comp ID codes of these components, or the functional location codes of these components, you can also locate them. Another feature, which I'm showing you at the moment, is this pop-up, which has now shown up as soon as I've hovered over the name of the component. What it does is it always shows you the other two alternatives. So we have the component ID, the functional location code, and the actual descriptive name. So you can see this economizer inlet header A5 left-hand side has the comp ID of Letabo 4 boiler 0300, and it has the functional location code according to AKZ of NA10G001A5. So one can also always look at this. So I'm just going to, well, to avoid going back to the master, if I was to go there and in the master select any station, any area, go inside and change the show as component name to functional location code, what would actually be shown here in the list in this instance would be the functional location code. So you would have NA10G001A5 here shown in the tree, and NA20G001, and so on. And hovering over those functional location codes of the different components, you would get the other two names. So the objective of the exercise, well, was to look at some of the documentation, which I have shown you already and will show you in a bit more detail. And we're going to go basically to these components, these economizer inlet headers, open a preview, and basically show the carob drawing of the economizer inlet header, which has been uploaded on the component level. So again, just to repeat, to navigate from the overview when we're completely closed, we have the overview, we have the complete number of components which have been uploaded, for example, in this instance for the whole of Eskom, and then the complete number of components in Arnott Power Station, or Kendal Power Station, or Matla Power Station. Expanding on this, on any of these, for instance, let's go to Duva Power Station. You get a breakdown. The breakdown we have chosen and agreed with Eskom is that we keep the common plant outside of the unit structure, because common plant components, there are common plant components which serve 1 or 2 units or 3 units, but in general they are, let's say, common for the whole plant, therefore they are outside of the unit structure. And we have the unit 6 which was covered, and if we expand the unit 6, we have the boiler plant, the generator and electrical, and the turbine. And you're given the respective numbers of components which were covered within these different plants, and indeed the whole station. So going back to our Letabo, okay, it's already expanded there. We wanted to go to the economizer inlet headers A5 and A6. Another point, just to show you here, once we expand to the component level, this legend on the side here shows us to which level of assessment a component has been assessed and in which methodology. So in the method selection, we would have API RBI, so utilizing the API 581 for the semi-quantitative, and then the VMAP, and subsequently EN 16991 qualitative methodology on level 1, or again API. And then we have the Eskom RBI EN 16991, which is specifically geared towards Eskom. So in the legend, we're going to be able to see which components have been done to which level of analysis. All of these components have basically been done with Eskom RBI. So if I expand my economizer inlet header, for instance, A5 left-hand side, you will now see in which analyses this component has been assessed. The master analysis is, of course, the master repository of all the data, and always the most current data. So in this case, we have this component. It was assessed in a Part A analysis, and then pre-outage, and then it was assessed in a Part B analysis post-outage. Typically, the data which is stored in the master analysis, which is all the design information about the component, the inspection history of the component, but also the most recent approved, verified assessment, would, for these kinds of stations where we have a Part A and a Part B, would be, the assessment information would be the same as the assessment information from the Part B. So clicking on any of these will open up a separate tab and show me basically a very basic component preview, a preview of this component. and some of its design and operating data. So I can go to the master, or I can indeed go to any of these analyses where it was done, and if I click it, it opens up a component preview of this component. And here we have basically the risk matrix, the level 2 risk matrix of this component as it was. This is showing the one dominant damage mechanism at the moment, so not showing all of the individual damage mechanisms. Once the user actually opens these components in the master analysis, or indeed in any individual analysis, they can flick between the dominant damage mechanism and all of the damage mechanisms which were assessed for this component and get the different scores. We get the basic component information, identification information. It is a component which is going with the comp ID Letabo for boiler 300. The process unit to which it belongs to, so its parents are boiler plant, unit 4 of Letabo power station. The system is tied to the KKS structure which we have introduced. So this is it is an economizer inlet header, and it belongs to the economizer system, so we have classified it as such. So it belongs to HAC economizer system. Standardized component types, which we will also cover later. So it is a header manifold type component. This is the descriptive name, which is understandable to us humans, when it started service, and then you get some of its basic component data. Again, this identification data, its dimensional data, its design, pressures and temperatures, operating pressures, temperatures, flow rates, and in the case of high temperature components operating in the creep range, nominal operating temperature of 400. Material of construction, type of material. This would be much more important for API RBI analysis. Nonetheless, it is good to select the correct type of material. We'll get into that in more detail. And the designation of the material. Pressure testing information, prescribed, as according to law, inspection information, other data, which was from the part C, D, E, and F in the old ESCOM scorecard, design data sources, part C, operating data sources, part D, inspection data sources, part E, and failure or repaired data sources, part F. And other fields which were included in the ESCOM scorecards, whether or not the system to which the component belongs has safety and protection devices, online monitoring, and so on. The damage mechanisms which were selected for level 1 and level 2 assessment, if there were any comments on the level of the component, and the documentation which is available. And an additional overview which is showing in which different analyses it has been assessed and when, and of course it's located in the master analysis as well, if it is a component within this database at all. That is the kind of component preview that the user can get here. Now, in order to open the drawing, one would simply navigate down to this component and see which kind of documentation is attached on the level of the component. In this case, this is a Carib drawing of this economizer inlet header. So it's as easy as that to just access the different drawings or the different documentation, assuming it has been uploaded on the appropriate level. So this has been a very quick overview from this very first exercise. Basically, in summary, showing how to log into the system and showing some of the basic features of the system on the start page, how to come to the overview on the side pane and how to access it, how to expand down the tree structure and locate components, how also to change the shown component names in the master analysis, how to open documentation which has been uploaded into the system at different levels, and we've basically gone down and tracked down a single component in the tree structure and opened and displayed its component level documentation which has been attached.